Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing with our 2022 season previews as we take a look at the Michigan State Spartans, a team that in the national media, the narrative is, oh, they're not going to be as good. They were 5-0 in one-score games, and they're due for a regression. My opinion on that, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, is these guys gamed up when it counted. I mean, obviously, we're Michigan fans. And Peyton Thornton played his best football when it mattered in the fourth quarter. And that's kind of something that Mel Tucker's preached, that toughness, that ability to not flinch when you hit adversity. And you saw that multiple times. When you're 5-0, that means you just know how to win those close games. I don't think it's necessarily a luck thing. Before we do start talking about some more Michigan State football, just wanted to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. We appreciate it. It's been a blast talking about your guys' college football teams in the comments. So let us know in the comments what players we're missing on. Fill us in about your teams. And Dill, let's start talking some Michigan State football. I'm going to kick it off to you because Peyton Thornton's one of your guys. What is your feel on Peyton Thornton as we start about this offensive side of the football?
Peyton Thornton's a guy who, sneaks up on you, I feel like. Because
yes,
I'd say the bulk of his game isn't great. It's like he missed too many throws probably. He doesn't have, cannon arm. Doesn't make a ton of plays. But just what you said, when it gets down to the time they need him to make plays, he makes the plays. He did it against Michigan. I think of that 4th and 1, throws the ball to the outside, beats Daxton Hill. It's like just those plays they make. Yeah, he made winning plays. And as not great as maybe the rest of his game is, or kind of average, if you will, he comes up for them when they need him.
That's what I exactly think of when I think of Peyton Thornton. And he's a guy that hand up was not high on him coming into the season. Wasn't impressed from what I saw in previous seasons, but he's a guy who's tough as nails, and he can pick up this. It's not always pretty. He doesn't have a rocket arm, like you said. He's pretty accurate with the football, but it's not pretty. 3rd and 5, he can pick it up with his legs. He finds a way to move the sticks. But I want to talk about it a little bit more when we're talking about offense for the Michigan State Spartans is what's it going to look like without Kenneth Walker? Dill, Jalen Berger is a guy that's been on your radar. He's a Wisco guy. You love the Wisco running backs. What do you think he can do for this Michigan State team as they try to replace Kenneth Walker here?
Well, that's the hope is they can – I think that, it's just he's not going to be Kenneth Walker at the end of the day, but at least you're not – you maybe hope you're not taking a step back to where you can't run the ball, because if they can't run the ball, they're not going to win, any games, I don't think. So I think you did roll in 2 decent transfers. Obviously not going to be what it was last year, but I think you do have 2 guys who played a lot of good football in college in big programs or big conferences at least. And I don't know. It's hard to be wildly optimistic about the room just because Kenneth Walker did so much for them.
I mean, keep in mind, Kenneth Walker coming from Wake wasn't this heralded recruit. If you watch Wake, you guys know I'm a Wake guy. He was good, but I didn't think he'd be that good. And he was just the offensive line for Michigan State, and we'll talk about it a little later, it wasn't that impressive. We watched a bunch of their games. Kenneth Walker was kind of doing it on his own. But what I like about this running back room is how it looks if you think about it as a basketball team. You have your bigger, probably all-purpose back in Jalen Berger, who is proven at the Big Ten level to be a solid running back and probably would still be at Wisco if Braylon Allen wasn't as much of a stud as he is. Then a guy like Jarek Broussard, who in 2020 averaged almost 6 yards a carry. He's a little bit smaller, 5'9", 185 pounds, but he's very, very good in space. He's dealt with some injuries, but he's looked good the last 2 seasons. And I'm excited to see how Michigan State kind of balances these 2 guys out because, yes, they're no Kenneth Walkers, but they're 2 guys who are very good, and they bring kind of a diverse set of skill sets. And so I think that running back room will be decent. Now, what I want to talk about is, you lose Kenneth Walker, but you are getting back, and it's massive that Jaden Reed decides to come back. Probably one of the most explosive players in the country in Jaden Reed. And without Kenneth Walker and Dill, we were watching a film of Michigan State before we got on here.
Yep, they're going to need to feed him.
I was saying
different ways to get him the ball.
You have to. I mean, this dude is absolutely electric in punt returns. He's very good vertically. As much as this offense kind of struggled on a consistent basis, they hit those explosive plays, whether it was with Kenneth Walker or Jaden Reed. And if they can still run the football and get those play actions, I mean, I think they hit 2 long touchdowns with flea flickers. I think this offense can still be explosive, but Jaden Reed needs to be a centered part of this offense. And another guy, Trey Mosley. Dill, you liked his game a lot as more of the Solid wide receiver, too, who's going to get open. He's going to catch balls in tight spaces. And then a guy like Daniel Barker, coming in from Illinois, 6'4", big body, and 260-pound guy. He's not a great playmaker, but I think he's going to be really good in the red zone. He's caught, 11 touchdowns in his career at Illinois, and just a brutal Illinois offense. So he's going to be plus.
Frankly, they might be able to use a little bit of 2 tight end sets because Malik Carr is actually a pretty solid player in my mind too, and a younger player. So if he can have a move forward, I mean, he's got like big, athletic, kind of looks a little Jelani Woods like, just body type. And if he can take it up and make some improvements, like he seems like a guy who could have a really good year too. So if they can use 2 tight ends, that honestly might help him because it might help him run it at least
better.
If they can just give you the sets that they can play power ball as well.
Yeah, and that is what Mel Tucker wants to do. Now, this offensive line, they're losing some guys, but this offensive line wasn't like world beaters last year. And I think getting some guys, you get a guy like Brian Green in the transfer portal who probably play at one of those interior spots. I don't think they're definitely not taking a step back. I think if anything, they probably can take a step forward because quite frankly, Kenneth Walker is doing a lot on his own. Like that,
they need to get a lot better. That offensive line, like you better hope that it gets better because it was not good. They couldn't block like Michigan at all. That Nebraska did pretty good getting to their quarterback, and that Nebraska wasn't a great pass rushing unit either. So it's like, yeah, Michigan, okay, fine. They were rushing on everybody, but it seemed like Michigan State was really giving up a fair amount of pressures and taking some sacks. So. Along with, not giving Kenneth Walker that much help. He was just a stallion.
Kenneth Walker was just the best player on the field pretty much every time he stepped on. And that's what kind of Michigan State really relied on. Now, the defensive side of the ball was kind of a tale of two cities here because their run game in their front seven I actually like a lot. But holy smokes was that secondary bit. They were 130th in the FBS in yards per game through the air given up. I mean, that is legit second to last in the whole entire country. Michigan, who didn't really throw on anybody, threw for 350 yards on them. That unit needs to get better. Let's start with the front seven. They were top 10 in sacks, and their pass rush was good. Losing a guy like Jacob Panasiuk is going to be tough, but still, those interior defensive linemen for them are pretty solid.
I mean, they're rolling they're getting all 4 of them back, and 64 is really good. Jacob Slade. I think the other guys are solid and just good rotating through. So you got your horse probably in Slade with a good supporting cast. And, they're probably going to need it because the edge play wasn't great last year.
Outside of Panasiuk.
And they're losing Panasiuk. So, I think Jeff Pietrowski's pretty good. Not like great, but he'll be a solid piece.
He kind of reminds me because Jacob Panasiuk wasn't like the best athlete on the field, but he had an extremely high motor. And Jeff Pietrowski kind of has that number 47. He's a gritty guy. Let's just face it. You get rewarded for having a high motor. You will run into sacks, and that's what Michigan State kind of did last year. They didn't have like great pass rush guys individually, but they were top 10 in sacks, and partially because that was teams throwing the ball all the time on them, but partially they worked hard. And then you get a guy like Chris Bogue, who's a former top 100 recruit, transferring from Florida. He's a guy that has all the talent in the world, and if he can put together a 10-sack season, I like that defensive line unit. And then let's get to the linebackers. They bring in 2 transfers. Aaron Brule is a guy that I like out of Mississippi State, but we got to talk about Cal Haladay. I mean, what he did as a redshirt freshman was insane. He's all over the football field. We just got to get the kid some swag. I mean, no gloves, no sleeves,
But that's the Michigan State way. All the great linebackers from Michigan State kind of look like that. So
they say no swag, no swag is good swag, but he's a baller.
Sounds like basically what they would have said with D'Antonio.
Yeah, he's a baller. And Quavius Crouch transfers out. That kind of hurts the depth, but they bring in transfers to kind of help that. Darius Snow's a guy who also had 80 tackles on the season, so he's a good ball player too. That the front seven, it should be good. Now let's talk about the secondary because that's where they struggle the most. They're returning pretty much everybody. A guy like Xavier Henderson, my take on the secondary is they were just playing too much bend but don't break. Like really, really soft zone coverages, and teams were just having free 5, 7, 10-yard out routes, in routes, sitting in the middle of the field in zone coverage. There was just too much space in those zone coverages. So that strikes me as less of a personnel problem, like you don't have good football players, and more of a let's get another year under our belt with returning guys, and hopefully we can kind of fix that. But guys like Xavier Henderson's good. And then we got to talk about Amir Speed, who's a physical 6'3" cornerback coming from Georgia. He started a few games on that phenomenal Georgia defense last year. It's got to get back.
They just need some guys who can run with people because they were giving up a lot of big plays. In what you said, just a lot of space on the field. So there just needs to be some something's got to change because you can't be number, well, were they 130 or something? Or 131? Yeah. So it's like that's just and for a team that actually had a great record, it's kind of incredible that they were – because how can you play that bad a pass defense and not be a wildly explosive offense, frankly? But I don't know. Somehow they made it work, and at the end of it was mostly what you kind of mentioned at the start. They made plays when they had to, and even that cornerback room and the secondary did in their own right. It's like that Nebraska game. They iced it with a pick, and so they
just big plays.
There's some room to grow, I would think, and be better because, they as bad as the stats were, they still won a lot of games and made some plays for them, even in the back end where they really struggled.
This was a team, Michigan State. This was a team, and obviously Kenneth Walker was kind of a no-name transfer from Wake Forest at the time. Preseason, they were projected 3.5 wins at Vegas. They were, I believe, 3-point underdogs playing Northwestern at home the opening week. I mean, this was a team that nobody expected to be good, and then what? They go 11-2 with a 7-2 record in the Big Ten. They were awesome, and that is because what you just said. They kind of gamed up in the fourth quarter. They didn't flinch like Mel Tucker preaches. It looked good.
It's hard to explain how they were so good because honestly, when you saw them play Ohio State, it didn't look like they even belonged in the Big Ten. But God, they won games. I don't know. Maybe Mel Tucker is like that.
Mel Tucker,
coach. I think he is a very good coach.
I'll add one thing before we look at the schedule. Mel Tucker's doing a great job in there. I want to note the recruiting, and this was something I wanted to open with, is Mike D'Antonio how he recruited was kind of just Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, like the Midwest. Mel Tucker's going out, and he's in the top 5 for prospects from Texas, Florida, California. Mel Tucker looks to be kind of getting that recruiting back on track. And that's really how you start building the program. Now, looking at their schedule, they open up Friday night, Western Michigan at home, Akron at home. Those should be layup games if they're as good as we think they will. Now, a sleeper game. And Washington's a team that I'm not that high on, but going on the road to Seattle, a night game at Washington, that is a hard place to play. And so don't overlook that game. But if they can get out of that stretch 3-0 and start their Big Ten play against a team that Minnesota – beatable, Maryland beatable. They have Ohio State.
That's a hard stretch, though. That's a hard.
This is the stretch.
That schedule.
This is the stretch. Ohio State, Wisconsin as your homecoming, and then you go on the road to Ann Arbor, and then you finish off with some
legit games.
Yep, and then you get a little easier stretch with Illinois, Rutgers, Indiana, and then that Penn State game is probably gonna kind of be the term. They'll probably be what, maybe 7-4. 8-3, and that's kind of gets you into that. Are they going to be a 10-win team, or are they going to be a 6 or 7-win team? Vegas has them at 7.5. It's really going to come down to is that offensive line. For one, are they going to fix their coverage issues, and then how much of a step back does this Michigan State offense take without Kenneth Walker, because he was the best player on the field for Michigan State every single game. Again,
Michigan State's a hard team to predict because I don't totally get how they were as good as they were last year. I don't get how they beat Michigan still, and it still hurts me. But they did it. They found a way somehow, and I mean, yeah, I think when your coach can maintain some composure on his end, I do think it helps teams. I think, those winners win. So it's hard to doubt Michigan State and Mel Tucker because it seems like they're just a team that's going to find the way to win games and find a way not to lose them. So
and then you could say the opposite thing for a team like Nebraska. It's no coincidence that Nebraska goes 0-9 in one-score games, and then
Yeah,
Michigan
Michigan
State goes
didn't lose.
5-0 in one-score games. Like that's not a coincidence. That is Scott Frost just hasn't really brought that winning culture to Nebraska yet. We might see that come, and then Mel Tucker is just bringing that juice. Like those guys believe they can go win football games, whether it's in East Lansing or on the road. That's a review on Michigan State again. This is a team that's really difficult because the personnel, the roster, I'm not like drooling over. It's not that impressive a roster, but they won 11-2 last year. They with the New Year's Six bowl game. Like this team wins football games, as you noted. So Michigan State's gonna be a very, very fun game or fun team to watch in the 2022 season. We appreciate you guys checking us out. If you guys do like the content, again, Big Ten football, we love talking here. So come subscribe to the channel, hang out with the fellas as we talk ball, then let us know in the comment section what you guys think. We'll talk to y'all later.